Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Chief Executive Officer of the American Heart Association, Nancy Brown.
Welcome to Philadelphia and to the American Heart Association's 92nd Annual Scientific Sessions, where the birthplace of American medicine meets the premier assembly of influencers in cardiovascular science and medicine. Yes, the birthplace of American medicine. Bolstering that statement is the fact that we have gathered in the hometown of the first United States hospital, medical school, Children's Hospital, College of Pharmacy, and additionally, out of every 6 U.S. doctors, one of them have trained in this region. Ending heart disease is a personal mission for the esteemed president of the American Heart Association. Dr. Robert Harrington began his journey in clinical cardiology and clinical research at Duke University, where he rose to serve as director of the Duke Clinical Research Institute. In 2012, he moved west to Stanford University, where he is the Arthur L. Bloomfield Professor and Chairman of the Department of Medicine. Globally, Dr. Harrington is best known for his work in the design, execution, and review of randomized clinical trials. His very significant contributions to the American Heart Association include helping to launch and guide One Brave Idea, the $85 million research enterprise founded by the American Heart Association and Verily, with significant support from AstraZeneca and Quest Diagnostics. Dr. Harrington also served as chairperson of Scientific Sessions, this meeting, in 2013 and 2014, and has led our Health Technology Advisory Group. He serves on the American Heart Association Board of Directors and chairs our highest science body, the Science Advisory and Coordinating Committee. Please welcome to the stage the American Heart Association President, Dr. Robert Harrington.
Wow, tough act to follow, isn't it? Greetings and good afternoon. I hope you're all enjoying the American Heart Association's annual scientific sessions. These days are filled with discussions about ways to expand our individual areas of science by everything from novel molecular mechanisms to new clinical trials and how new ideas might contribute to the evidence we generate. I always go home energized, and I bet you do too. I'm very pleased that for the first time we're having scientific sessions in Philadelphia, one of America's most historic cities, with a long-standing commitment to invention and research as well as to clinical medicine. I want to thank the Committee on Scientific Sessions Programming, led by Drs. Donald Lloyd-Jones and Manesh Patel, for creating a program that matches our host city's commitment to scientific diversity, innovation, and that includes the great diversity of the people and perspectives gathered here, including those of you who've traveled from around the globe to be with us. I particularly hope my message today resonates with all of you who are early in your career. In my day job as chair of medicine at Stanford University, I appreciate your importance, and I especially want to reach out to you here today. You are the future of our profession, of the American Heart Association, of your home institutions, and of your communities around the world. I'd also like to call out those who've been recognized by your AHA councils for your contributions to science and who are now designated fellows of the American Heart Association. Okay, all the Fahas in the crowd, let me see you wave your pennants. You'll also see all of your names listed in the Faha Lounge and the video playing throughout the convention center. We are delighted to welcome you as partners in the AHA's mission, an idea that transcends borders as we seek to be a relentless force for a world of longer, healthier lives. As you may know, I was an early adopter of communication tools like Twitter and podcasts because I believe these formats help amplify our work. I know many of you agree because I've seen provocative and fun social media posts the last few days, even this morning. I hope you continue to use our meeting hashtag AHA19. We want this session to be interactive too. We'll be posting some questions and asking you to respond. On the side screen, you'll see how to do that. If you haven't already, sign in now so that you'll be prepared for the first questions. In multiple ways at this meeting, we'll be seeing evidence from all aspects of cardiovascular science and medicine and learning new ways to find and work with this evidence. Why is this so valuable? Because evidence matters. Evidence matters in basic discovery science and in the translation of science from the bench to the bedside and then to the community. Evidence affects the quality of the care we provide, and it supports our advocacy for improvements in health policy. It's highly motivating to get up every morning knowing that we are part of one of the most important pursuits that humans can undertake, the search for truth. We're living in a time when scientific misinformation abounds and is heavily promoted, often by those with self-interests. Facts seem to matter less, and truth may even be suppressed. But the truth always, eventually, wins. And as both individual clinicians and scientists, and as an organization committed to public health, people trust us. Along with that trust comes an obligation to accurately communicate the evidence and its implications. This goes beyond publishing our science. We need to combat the misinformation that can be so damaging to the health of our patients and to the public. On the other hand, of course, it's exciting to pursue ideas that might make a real difference in the lives of others. I see that excitement in students and early career scientists. But some of you may still be sorting out career choices and considering whether there's too much risk spent pursuing new ideas. And this leads us to our first set of questions. Get out your phones, because I want to know what you think. First, what area of research are you involved in? If you're involved in more than one, mark them all. All right, it looks like you figured out how to do it. I'm glad there's some early career people here to help. Well, this is terrific. I think what you see on this slide is really the best of the American Heart Association. Everything from basic discovery science, translation, clinical population health science, and then those of you who are involved in health policy and health services. Next, those involved in research may be worried about where you'll find support for your ideas. Here are some of the options. Tell us what organizations are supporting your research. Again, fantastic. I think it represents the diversity of the science that you'll see over yesterday and then today and tomorrow, because it really does point out that we're all searching for funding in a variety of places. And funding is a perpetual challenge in the pursuit of evidence. but I want to be sure you recognize the AHA's pivotal role. The AHA is the largest nonprofit funder of cardiovascular and stroke research outside the federal government, with about $500 million, $500 million in research grant obligations at any one time. Last year, we invested over $180 million to fund more than 830 new research projects, with over 75% of those going to early career investigators. All told, we have invested $4.5 billion in research funding. We've supported the early careers of 14 Nobel Prize winners, and we can support your research too. In addition to these investments, we're committed to strong advocacy to protect and expand essential funding options, particularly the NIH and other federal agencies. Let me tell you a little about what led me to the pursuit of evidence. I've always been driven to figure out clinical problems, those things that we just don't fully understand. Luckily for me, that's a key part of the evidence generation cycle. And we'll come back to more of the cycle later. When I began my cardiology fellowship at Duke University in 1990, a major problem in interventional cardiology was coronary thrombosis during balloon angioplasty. Remember, this was the pre-stent era, and all we had was unfractionated heparin and aspirin. These clots could close vessels, so our patients needed urgent bypass surgery. Some had myocardial infarctions, and some died. We needed solutions. And fortunately for me, I had the chance to pursue clinical questions in a supportive environment with mentors like Rob Califf, Richard Stack, Kerry Lee. So what did we need to solve this clinical problem? The basic science in thrombosis and vascular biology wasn't enough. We had to stratify the risk of our patients and test whether novel antithrombotic therapies could modify that risk. The evidence needed for the clinical development of these drugs required a series of large-scale, often global, randomized clinical trials, many designed and coordinated by our research group and implemented with hundreds of collaborators worldwide. These clinical investigators recruited tens of thousands of patients. Teams of study coordinators and research assistants collected the data that we needed. As an interventional fellow and junior faculty member, I was increasingly included in protocol design discussions, in steering committees, and in learning how to coordinate these global trials. I learned how to assemble, analyze, and present the data at meetings, and ultimately to regulatory authorities. I loved the cath lab, but it was thrilling to learn about the clinical investigation of new drugs and to see those drugs make enough of a difference for patients that they're still in clinical use today. An essential lesson I learned was that simplicity in integrating research into practice settings was key to making these trials happen. I also learned that clinical trials involving medical products often require the collaboration and support of industry. Because of this, independence in the design and conduct of a trial, in the analysis and dissemination of its results, is essential for maintaining the public's trust in evidence. At the Duke Clinical Research Institute, we developed a system for remaining independent from industry sponsors while still being collaborative. That independence was critical in convincing policymakers that our evidence was trustworthy. Because of the important intersection between evidence generation and regulatory policy development, we worked with these federal regulators on issues related to drug development, review, and approval. This even led to my serving as a member in a two-term chair of the FDA's Cardiovascular and Renal Drugs Advisory Committee. If you're invited to participate in this process at any level, I would encourage you to do it. My federal colleagues tell me that the process needs us. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, the need for independent academic oversight of randomized clinical trials led us and others around the globe to build academic, clinical, data, and statistical coordinating centers that could serve as the hubs for collaborative research. And the AHA pushed hard for having all clinical trials listed on a central source, clinicaltrials.gov, which has become an important international resource, assuring that negative trials don't just disappear. These initiatives demonstrated that evidence matters, and trustworthy evidence matters even more. Before we discuss putting this evidence into practice, I want to hear from you again. Have you ever changed your practice on the basis of a single clinical trial? Getting pretty close to equipoise here. For some of you, a yes. For some of you, no. I think that's the nature of clinical investigation. But now I want to know about those game changers. Send us the name of a clinical trial that you think proved conventional wisdom wrong. Yeah, it happens all the time, doesn't it? And it's really nice to see the NHLBI-sponsored ischemia trial presented here at Sessions yesterday listed so prominently. Congratulations to those investigators. We're constantly working to use data like this to keep our clinical practice guidelines timely, accessible, and trustworthy. But there's not as much of the highest quality evidence, such as that derived from multiple randomized clinical trials, as we need. When we assessed our clinical practice guidelines in 2009, this highest level of evidence was only available to support 11% of recommendations, and it has not improved today, according to a more recent study. This knowledge gap certainly provides an opportunity to do better, to create that better evidence. But again, how can we support that research? For many clinical questions, companies have no financial incentives to fund trials. In the U.S., our major federal funder for cardiovascular disease research is the NHLBI. The government has seen an excellent return on the NHLBI's investment in public health through the support of clinical trials. Some recent noteworthy successes include SPRINT and, as you heard yesterday at our late-breaking clinical trial session, the ischemia trial. Unfortunately, despite these successes, the fiscal reality is that the NHLBI funds for such practice-changing clinical trials are still very much limited. Fortunately, a few other sources, such as PCORI, have become available in recent years, but more resources are needed. What if we created a nationwide learning healthcare system? And could we do this worldwide? Because evidence matters, we really need to find a way. So far, we've been looking at evidence in my favorite briar patches of clinical trials and outcomes research. But some of you are pursuing careers in epidemiology, health services, or health policy research, trying to benefit populations. The AHA thinks about that kind of research too, especially when we set organizational goals. You may know that in 2000, we set a goal of reducing deaths from coronary heart disease and stroke in the U.S. by 25% by 2010. Our metrics were age-adjusted death rates provided by our partners at the CDC. We worked especially hard to foster evidence-based therapies via guidelines, performance measures, and quality improvement initiatives. One of the most impactful QI initiatives has been Get With The Guidelines, which continues to help healthcare providers improve the acute care and prevention they deliver, now in nearly 2,500 hospitals in the U.S. and proudly in partnership with hundreds more worldwide. Altogether, we did very well, accelerating the decline in deaths that had begun decades before. While we also had some success in reducing disparities in care, substantial health inequities still persisted at the end of that decade, and we took that into account as we moved towards the next 10 years. In 2010, we announced our next goal by 2020 to improve the cardiovascular health of all Americans by 20%, while reducing deaths from cardiovascular diseases and stroke by 20%. With the phrase, all Americans, we committed to examining everything through a health equity lens, and we expanded our research to address all cardiovascular diseases as well as stroke. We started off well, but the decline in deaths began plateauing around 2014, and there's been an increase in age-adjusted stroke deaths over the last 4 years. The unfortunate reality is that our progress is stalled, and we'd like to hear from you on this. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, how much does this plateauing or flattening of the death rate worry you? We at the American Heart Association are worried about this as well, and you'll hear us throughout the afternoon talk about substantial investments into trying to change that trajectory. Statistics show pockets of success, such as with our old foe, coronary heart disease. Deaths from coronary heart disease have declined more than 20% over this period, and the decline is seen across racial and ethnic subgroups. While we haven't come close to full equity, there is progress. Heart failure, on the other hand, seems to be responsible for at least part of the plateauing, and we don't have a solution for the problem with stroke, although recent advances in acute treatment hold promise. Population data, another important form of evidence, tells us that improvements in cardiovascular health are strongly related to education, income, and zip code, even more than genetic code. This recent study reported that low-income counties in the U.S. had less improvement in cardiovascular health than high-income countries. In an upcoming AHA presidential advisory, we point out a major health divide between urban America and the 60 million living in rural communities. So when we look at the entire landscape, we see opportunities to make a difference. This has nothing to do with etiology. This is about truth, because evidence matters. Evidence also matters in issues such as diversity in the workforce. Investigators who choose the science they do are often more sensitive to the needs of others like themselves. And those of us who train and hire them need to find and nurture individuals reflecting our diverse population. Over the last 30 years, I've mentored and trained hundreds of individuals. As a department and health system leader the last 7 years, I've become quite concerned with the lack of diversity in cardiovascular medicine. A particular type of student I've become recently mentoring is one that I especially relate to, the first-generation college student. Not only was I the first person in my family to attend college, I think I may have been the first in my neighborhood. I can relate to the struggles these students face. Everything from imposter syndrome to not understanding career opportunities that might be readily available. First-generation medical students face many of the same issues. I've become personally committed to helping, and I hope those of you who've sometimes walked this lonely path will share your time and expertise with these students and trainees. Sharing your story is another way of making evidence matter. Another part of my personal narrative shapes my professional outlook. It stems from the fact that I was raised by a hard-working single mother. My only sibling is a sister. I have 4 daughters, 2 granddaughters, and a wife who has a master's degree and directs the physician assistant graduate program at Stanford. Unfortunately, I lost my mother far too young. She was 42 when she succumbed to sudden cardiac death. However, I'm fortunate and proud to be joined here today by many of the intelligent and talented women who mean so much to me. Thanks for giving me a minute. The point is, the insight and a support of a variety of women have helped shape me throughout my life and career. Yet, within the world of cardiology, the male-female ratio is out of whack. Fewer than 20% of U.S. cardiologists are women. Stunningly, 12 states have fewer than 10 women cardiologists. Numbers are similarly imbalanced in many other countries as well. At AHA, our new Go Red for Women Science and Medicine Committee has set goals for the inclusion of women in all science activities, including the development of enhanced grant submission and peer review processes to identify and eliminate potential biases against women. While our science committees currently are 42% women, we are committed as an organization to get to 50% by 2021. And of more immediate interest, there are no all-male panels, no manels at these scientific sessions. Thank you, Donald Lloyd-Jones and Manesh Patel, for ensuring that. For us to realize gender equity in cardiovascular medicine, men in power must recognize this disparity and do something about it. Let's not leave talent behind. Evidence and the people producing it matter. Dr. Eugene Stead, a giant of American medicine and former chair of medicine at Duke, once noted that chronic, multifactorial disease programs can be studied, but not by the methods of the present or past. If one wishes to create useful information, computer technology must be exploited. He said that in 1973. Today, we have the computing power and methods to fulfill his vision. Cardiovascular medicine now exists in the world of big data, where it's estimated that medical data doubles every 73 days. This requires us to think differently about the design of clinical trials and to develop new tools. The adaptable trial is a great example of doing a trial differently. We've used innovative technologies to screen the electronic health records of hundreds of thousands of patients to answer a critically important clinical question. What is the optimal dose of aspirin for patients with coronary artery disease? 15,000 patients linked to the protocol by only 40 U.S. health systems have volunteered to help. This approach to link patients with this trial is much more efficient than using hundreds of individual sites. Remarkable. And another step forward in study design similar to the advances by the Swedish investigators who pioneered the randomized registry trial. We look forward to the next innovation, perhaps by someone in this audience. I believe we've only scratched the surface of optimizing the generation of evidence. We have available to us huge amounts of data, from basic science to EHRs to public and population health data sets, including information on the environment, housing, income, racial and ethnic diversity, and more. Cloud computing enables the AHA's Institute for Precision Cardiovascular Medicine to make sense of data like this, using advanced methods like AI and machine learning. The Institute also provides funding for the data scientists who make this happen. But these approaches need to be held to the same level of scientific scrutiny as drugs and devices. Evidence does matter, and it can lead to a better future. Here are a few other examples. Project Baseline involves deep subject phenotyping and long-term follow-up to understand what defines human health and to discover what signals transitions from health to disease. It's a contemporary version of the Framingham Heart Study, but with up to 8 terabytes of data being collected on each of 10,000 participants. We can search for early predictors, amenable to correction in time to make a difference. The ability to engage is also useful for studying a large population. In the Apple Heart Study, just published this week in the New England Journal of Medicine, my colleagues at Stanford used the Apple Watch to enroll more than 400,000 subjects in only 8 months to demonstrate that atrial fibrillation can be detected in a large asymptomatic population using a sensor in a device already being worn. The next step is determining whether these new approaches can actually bring value to patients and the healthcare system. AHA is fully invested in using big data resources, technology tools, and novel computational methods to better understand issues related to heart disease in women. The AHA has partnered with Verily and Project Baseline to create Research Goes Red, a technology platform to enroll and engage 1 million women to contribute their health data for investigation into heart and brain health. With the input of these women, we'll design a competitive research portfolio that addresses their health needs and concerns. Different as they are, these examples share a common theme. Vast amounts of data alone don't provide answer, but the evidence gleaned from analyzing data does matter. As we come to the end, let's go back to where we began, with one more message for early career investigators and clinicians. This is the most exciting time ever to be engaged in science in its application to clinical medicine and public policy. Sure, we have challenges, but every generation has challenges. What makes our opportunity so spectacular is that we have unprecedented ways to gather data and generate insights at a scale and speed our predecessors dreamed about. I believe in our future because I believe in everyone everywhere who's creating it. Together, we will provide the curiosity to raise the right questions, the passion to find the answers, the willingness to publish and speak truth to decision makers, and we'll do it all through an equity lens. So let's build one last word cloud along these lines. Amongst all the possibilities, what excites you most about the future of cardiovascular medicine? Fantastic word cloud. Equity, health, prevention, technology, women, and young. That is the future, and I too am excited about it. Lastly, the message I want you to take home from this speech is that evidence matters. In all aspects of preventing and treating cardiovascular disease and stroke, in all nations around the globe, we must prioritize gathering the highest quality evidence, and we must rely on that evidence for the decisions that we make. A world of longer, healthier lives will be the ultimate evidence of our success. Thank you very much. Now I would like to welcome our CEO, Nancy Brown, back to the stage.
Congratulations, Bob, on an incredible talk. When Bernard J. Tyson died in his sleep last Sunday, Kaiser Permanente lost its CEO and chairman. The American Heart Association lost a board member. Healthcare lost an influential leader who was on a quest for affordable, equitable coverage. Social justice lost a devoted champion. And I, like many of you, lost a dear, dear friend. I met Bernard in 2006, and we connected instantly. We were both raised in loving, middle-class families. We both joined our organizations in entry-level jobs. And at the same time we met, we both worked our way up to be chief operating officers of our organizations. Within a few years, we both became CEO. By then, he was also a wonderfully active member of the American Heart Association's board of directors. And while I'm fortunate to work with so many fantastic board members and CEOs, the parallel nature of Bernard's life and mine made our relationship unique. We shared many challenges and often pursued similar solutions. I learned so much from watching him and talking to him. Likewise, he bounced things off of me personally and professionally. Once I got over the traumatic news of his death, I was flooded with many memories, not of so much of his impressive accomplishments, but the many moments that best revealed his essence. Bernard had a laugh and a smile that warmed every room he entered. He exuded the humility, joy, and wonder of a man who never forgot where he came from. Excuse me. This is summed up nicely by the picture you see of Bernard taking a picture. Standing next to Bernard is legendary businessman Henry Kravis. Bernard and Henry were the co-founders of the American Heart Association's CEO Roundtable. They had become friends and colleagues. Still, when Bernard saw the breathtaking view of Central Park in Manhattan from Henry's office, his eyes widened. He pulled out his phone because he couldn't wait to share the scene with his beloved wife, Denise. Earlier this year at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, Bernard was part of a mental health panel alongside Prince William. As a CEO who frequently said, "You cannot disconnect the brain from the body," Bernard knew he belonged on such a stage. Still, he was giddy about sharing it with a member of the royal family. Leading up to the event, Bernard, Denise, and I fussed over everything from what he would wear to learning how to address the prince. Just a few weeks ago, Bernard left the American Heart Association board meeting in time to attend an important dinner with the NBA commissioner and members of the Golden State Warriors, including superstar Steph Curry. He texted me while he and Denise were just arriving for the event to let me know that he had made it on time and how excited he was for the evening. Bernard was friendly with them through Kaiser Permanente's partnership with the Warriors. Still, as someone who grew up in the Bay Area rooting for the Warriors, Bernard couldn't contain his excitement every time he was with Curry. I'd like to think that Curry was as excited to be with Bernard. Bernard would have been a leader in whatever field he went into, and luckily for all of us, he chose healthcare. As a child, his mom struggled with diabetes. She was in and out of the hospital. He spent so much time by her bedside that he aspired to someday run a hospital. His first job came at the hospital where his mom was often treated. And while his mom steered Bernard onto that path, his dad's guidance led him along it. Bernard's father was a carpenter and a part-time minister who hand-built the family home. He also emphasized to young Bernard that the way you improve yourself is by improving the world. 2 years ago, Bernard was named to the Time magazine's list of 100 most influential people. At a banquet for all honorees, Bernard was asked to make a toast. He shared several anecdotes about his dad, thus conveying the man's wisdom to all of the distinguished people in that ballroom. In 2006, Bernard's perspective expanded again. He suffered a heart attack and underwent open-heart surgery. It was a few months later when he and I met for the first time. One of the stories he told me is that while his doctors saved his life, his soul was soothed by a nurse who had held his hand and told him everything would be okay. He liked telling the story, I believe, because it was a metaphor of how he ran his health system. Yet Bernard did not limit himself to health care. He lent his powerful, eloquent voice to address everything he considered unjust, including racism, gun violence, poverty, and homelessness. He did this simply because the people at the root of those issues needed him. Last Sunday evening, I sent a note to all of our employees announcing Bernard's passing. I received so many replies from employees sharing their story of meeting Bernard for the first time, often at an AHA event or a board meeting. Each of these emails said they clearly remembered their time with him because he made them feel special. Those emails made me smile because I knew exactly what they meant. It was what Maya Angelou meant when she said, "I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." Amazingly, Bernard excelled in each of those areas. Through his words, his actions, and the way he made people feel, he left the world of healthcare and the world at large better than he found it. The fruits of his labors will be reaped for generations. I know I'll think of him and miss him often, certainly every time I flip on a TV and see Steph Curry or Prince William. So on behalf of the researchers, clinicians, lay volunteers, staff, and all of the others connected to the AHA, we send our deepest condolences to Bernard's family, to his wife Denise, to his sons Bernard Jr., Alexander, and Charles, and to his colleagues at Kaiser Permanente. We direct right now our heartfelt sentiments to former U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Regina Benjamin, who is here today on behalf of Kaiser Permanente as a member of their board and certainly as a loving friend to Bernard and Denise Tyson. Now please join them and me in a moment of silence before we honor more outstanding individuals in the American Heart Association family who are sadly no longer with us. Thank you.
Amazing individuals. And now, it is my pleasure to welcome the American Heart Association's 2019-2021 Chairman of the Board, Bertram L. Scott. Bert is the retired Senior Vice President for Population Health at Novant Health. He previously served as President and CEO of Affinity Health. Before that, he was President for U.S. Commercial Business at Cigna. He has 44 years of experience in marketing and corporate leadership in the medical and insurance industries. Bert is a longtime American Heart Association volunteer who has served on numerous boards and committees. In 2015, he received the AHA's Award of Meritorious Achievement for Outstanding National Volunteer Service. He is a passionate advocate for achieving health equity for all people, and in particular, for reducing the high prevalence of stroke among minority populations. It is my honor to introduce Bert Scott.
Thank you, Bob, and I can't tell you how excited I am proud to work with you over the next year. I'm also excited about being able to present this year's Chairman's Award winner. The Chairman's Award recognizes excellence by individual medical and science volunteers whose contributions have helped to further AHA's strategic goals both locally and nationally. This year's recipient is Dr. Cheryl Pegas, whose commitment to finding multi-pronged solutions for reducing healthcare disparities has significantly advanced AHA's mission by improving the health of communities all across the country. Dr. Pegas is an internist and cardiologist with more than 25 years of clinical practice and industry experience. She currently serves as President of Consumer Health Solutions and Chief Medical Officer at Cambia Health Solutions, where her work using evidence-based protocols to improve care for patients with chronic conditions earned her a spot on Modern Healthcare's top 50 most influential clinical executives. Motivated by her own family experience with poor access to health care, Dr. Pegas has devoted her career to finding innovative solutions to reduce these disparities. During the early part of her career, she focused her research on heart disease among women and minorities and worked to increase minority participation in clinical drug trials. She then focused her attention on data and analytics, which could be used to improve healthcare outcomes. Dr. Pegas is past president of AHA's Founders Affiliate and former chair of the Association's Health Disparities Task Force. Her volunteer work has extended to numerous organizations working to reduce health disparities. She is board chair for the Association of Black Cardiologists and co-chair of New Beat, which advocates for women and minorities in cardiology. Dr. Pegas also strives to reduce disparities in educational opportunities. She is responsible for the creation of a scholarship fund at Weill Cornell Medical College for minority students. It is my sincere honor to present the 2019 Chairman's Award for Excellence in Volunteer Service to Dr. Cheryl Pegas.
Hello, everyone. I first have to say just thank you. Thank you, thank you. I am humbled to be standing amongst these venerable leaders, receiving recognition from the American Heart Association today. Heart disease is a leading cause of death, and nearly half of U.S. adults have some form of heart disease. Women and minorities bear a more substantial burden, facing poorer outcomes because of underdiagnosis and undertreatment. As a young woman, I saw this firsthand while watching my grandfather suffer from preventable illnesses due to lack of access to care, and have worked since to improve healthcare access for underserved populations. I became a cardiologist, a job I love, and have dedicated my life's work to healthcare. It's just fun, it's doing the right thing, and I get to work with great people. My journey has given me the opportunity to work with incredibly talented individuals, sharing my commitment to access to equitable health care. I started volunteering with the American Heart Association when I was an intern in New York City. And cardiologists such as Dr. Joseph Hayes and Richard Levin served as great mentors and supporters. Michael Weimer, executive director for the American Heart Association in the Northeast at that time, was and is a great supporter of health equity initiatives, and we've done great work together. I have never left the American Heart Association since my early volunteer days and continue to humbly serve. Taking all that we do at the American Heart Association and all I have learned back to communities, partnered organizations like the Association of Black Cardiologists, the American College of Cardiologists, and the Cardiovascular Research Foundation, and to my personal daily work. Along the way, I have hopefully contributed, had my own life enriched, and called Bert Scott, Nancy Brown, Clyde Yancey, Bernie Dennis, Stacy Rosen, and others friends. The work continues, and I feel hopeful and energized for what we still will do together. My family here with me today, they're actually my secret sauce for all of my success. I want to thank them and all of you for truly this wonderful recognition. Thank you.
Each year, the American Heart Association confers the Distinguished Scientist designation on members who have produced far-reaching innovations in cardiovascular and stroke research. Let me direct you to this video highlighting 7 groundbreaking careers.
Hello, I'm Dr. Marielle Jessup, Chief Science and Medical Officer of the American Heart Association and American Stroke Association. AHA's Distinguished Scientists are a select group whose innovations have led to far-reaching implications in the field of cardiovascular and stroke research. Scientists like these are the driving energy behind our mission to be a relentless force for a world of longer, healthier lives. I would like to personally congratulate these outstanding leaders as they receive the organization's highest science honor. If you'd like to learn more about the American Heart Association's Distinguished Scientist Award, please visit our website at professional.heart.org.
Dr. Mark E. Anderson. The overarching goals of Dr. Anderson's research are to understand molecular signaling pathways important for heart failure, arrhythmias, and sudden death. His lab showed that CAM kinase 2 contributes to arrhythmias, and CAM kinase 2 inhibition protects against heart failure and arrhythmias. Oxidized CAM kinase 2 promotes cardiovascular and other diseases. Dr. Deepak L. Bhatt. Dr. Bhatt's research interests include treatment of acute coronary syndromes, advanced techniques in cardiovascular intervention, and the full gamut of preventive cardiology. He has led trials that defined optimal antithrombotic therapy, elucidated the role of bariatric surgery, and established omega-3 fatty acids in cardiovascular health. Dr. Costantino Idacola. Dr. Idacola's research focuses on cellular and molecular bases of cerebrovascular regulation and neurovascular coupling, molecular pathology of ischemic brain injury, and overlap with neurodegeneration. His most relevant findings are the role of innate and adaptive immunity and gut microbiota in ischemic brain injury, and the role of neurovascular dysfunction in Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. Dr. Brian Kobilka. Research in Dr. Kobilka's lab is focused on understanding the structural basis of transmembrane signaling by G-protein coupled receptors. His lab obtained structures of the beta-2 adrenergic receptor, a prototypical G-protein coupled receptor, in inactive, active, and G-protein coupled states. Dr. Suzanne Operill. Dr. Operill is a cardiologist with special interest in fundamental mechanisms of cardiovascular disease and the development of novel therapies for systemic and pulmonary hypertension and heart failure. She has made many groundbreaking observations that have greatly impacted clinical medicine and held a significant role in determining that angiotensin-converting enzyme, ACE, is involved in vascular disease, leading to the development of ACE inhibitors, which are widely used to treat hypertension. Dr. Veronique L. Roger. Dr. Roger's research focuses on epidemiology and outcomes of cardiovascular disease in community cohorts, with particular interest in the use of medical records and digital technology in population research. Her team contributed to understanding the evolving epidemiology of cardiovascular disease and developed a major line of work on multimorbidity and multiple chronic conditions in cardiovascular disease. Dr. Paul K. Welton. Dr. Welton's primary research focus is epidemiology, prevention and treatment of cardiovascular and renal disease, with an emphasis on prevention and treatment of high blood pressure. His team's most relevant discoveries are that weight loss and sodium reduction are effective for treatment and prevention of high blood pressure. They provide similar benefits for prevention of coronary heart disease during antihypertensive therapy with long-acting diuretics, calcium channel blockers, and angiotensin receptor blockers. In adults with hypertension who are at high risk for cardiovascular disease, more rather than less intensive reduction in blood pressure prevents cardiovascular events, all-cause mortality, and the combination of cognitive impairment and dementia.
Let's give our distinguished scientists a round of applause. Congratulations. 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 Well done. Congratulations. Thank you. The American Heart Association's Basic Research Award recognizes outstanding contribution by leaders of research laboratories to advance cardiovascular science. This year's award goes to Dr. Litsa Kranias for her groundbreaking work on phospholamban, or PLN. Her work has opened up new therapeutic approaches to treating heart failure. Dr. Kranias has done so much work investigating this molecule and deepening our understanding of it that she has come to be known by some as the mother of PLN. Her investigation of the molecule, the role this molecule plays in regulating cardiac function, has spanned several decades and led to numerous discoveries. For example, she and a colleague were the first to provide evidence that PLN is phosphorylated in the heart during fight or flight mode. Her lab also uncovered the role PLN plays in calcium signaling, identifying the molecule as a possible target for improving function in patients with heart failure. Dr. Kranias has earned national and international recognition for her work. She is an American Heart Association Distinguished Scientist and Fellow and has been continuously funded by the National Institutes of Health, which also honored her with Research Career Development and Merit Awards. She is a founding fellow of the International Society of Heart Research and a fellow of the Council on Basic Cardiovascular Sciences. It is my honor to award the 2019 Basic Research Award to Dr. Kranias for her groundbreaking contributions to the field of cardiovascular science.
Hello, I am Litsa from the University of Cincinnati College of Medicine. I'm humbled and honored to receive the 2019 Basic Research Prize from the American Heart Association. First of all, I want to thank my mentors, Larry Duma and Richard Youngman, as well as my first chair, Arnold Schwartz, who had a strong influence on me to pursue cardiovascular research. A molecular approach to phospholamban and its role in heart disease has been our driving force through the years. Our early discovery that phospholamban is a key regulator of the heart's function and a potential target has paved the way to the translational front, and we are getting close. These efforts gained further momentum when we discovered human phospholamban mutations. Today, there is a foundation by the patients, and we're working closely with them. Of course, any success of mine is owed to my bright and dedicated trainees who kept me challenged on a daily basis. I'm honored to have mentored them as they represent our bright future. Once again, I thank the American Heart for this honor. Working together, we can all wake up to a healthier tomorrow.
Congratulations, Dr. Kranias. Well done. Congratulations. Well done. Thank you. The Clinical Research Award recognizes individuals leading distinguished clinical research laboratories who are making exceptional contributions to the advancement of cardiovascular science. This year's award goes to Dr. Harlan M. Krumholz for his work as a founding leader in the field of outcomes research. His work has led to improvements in the quality of care and outcomes for millions of patients nationwide and beyond. Dr. Krumholz is the Harold H. Hines, Jr. Professor of Medicine at Yale University School of Medicine and the director of the Yale Center for Outcomes Research and Evaluation, one of the nation's first and most productive research units dedicated to producing innovations to improve patient outcomes and promote better population health. He is a widely published and internationally recognized quality of care researcher whose work has shed light on a broad range of cardiovascular performance metrics. He has led initiatives to improve quality of care, patient outcomes, reduce disparities, enable transparency in practice and research, and avoid wasteful practices. Such initiatives include architecting national and international quality measurement assays and strategies, developing platforms for research and clinical care in China, promoting patient-centric approaches to research and clinical care, and creating strategies and tools to facilitate open science and advance scientific integrity. He and his group are currently focused on harnessing the digital transformation in healthcare to accelerate knowledge generation and facilitate the delivery of care aligned with the needs and preferences of each individual. His analyses have identified the characteristics of top-performing physicians and hospital systems across multiple specialties. Dr. Krumholz has a long history of leadership and service with the American Heart Association. He was the founding chairperson of the annual Scientific Forum on Quality of Care and Outcomes Research and founding chair of the AHA's Quality of Care and Outcomes Research Interdisciplinary Working Group. He is an American Heart Association Distinguished Scientist. In 2008, he became the first editor of Circulation, Cardiovascular Quality and Outcomes. It is my honor to award the 2019 American Heart Association Clinical Research Award to Dr. Harlan Krumholz.
Hello, my name is Harlan Krumholz, and I accept this award on behalf of all those who contributed to the body of work that the award recognizes. Success is all about teams. I've had the honor and privilege of being part of extraordinary teams, teams full of talent and energy and aspirations, teams dedicated to generating knowledge that would make the world better. These teams have made mighty contributions to research intent on better informing decisions, improving outcomes, and supporting advances that would make healthcare more effective, efficient, equitable, patient-centered, timely, and safe. Thank you to those teammates whose brilliance, generosity, creativity, grit, and kindness made this a remarkable journey. Thank you to my mentors who taught me so much and inspired me to solve hard problems. Thank you to my students who also taught me so much and continue to do so and enriched my life so. Thank you particularly to my local team at Yale at the Center for Outcomes Research and Evaluation, who make what often seems impossible, possible, and do so with such integrity and dedication and bring such positive energy. And thank you to my family, and particularly to my wife, Leslie, without whose support and love, none of this would have been possible. Thank you all.
Congratulations, Dr. Krumholz. You're the best. The Population Research Award honors individuals heading population research laboratories who are making outstanding contributions to the advancement of cardiovascular scientists. This year's award goes to Dr. Maggie Redfield for her work expanding our understanding of the risk factors and demographics of heart failure through investigations of the population of Olmsted County, Minnesota. Dr. Redfield is the Walter and Leonore Annenberg Professor in Cardiology and Critical Care Medicine at the Mayo Clinic College of Medicine and Director of the Mayo Circulatory Failure Division, Department of Cardiovascular Diseases. She is also co-director of the Mayo Cardiorenal Research Laboratory in Rochester, Minnesota. Dr. Redfield's epidemiologic work with populations in Minnesota led to a much deeper understanding of heart failure with preserved ejection fraction. This condition affects about half of all patients admitted for heart failure. While continuing to do her own research in this important field, Dr. Redfield has also helped to train the next generation of cardiovascular investigators. Many of her postdoctoral trainees have gone on to become highly respected cardiologists and independent researchers in cardiovascular science. It is my great honor to bestow the 2019 Population Research Award upon Dr. Maggie Redfield.
I'm Maggie Redfield. I'm a heart failure cardiologist at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. I've studied heart failure, and particularly heart failure with preserved ejection fraction, or HFpEF, for over 25 years. I've used population-based clinical studies to define the epidemiology and integrative pathophysiology of HFpEF and related conditions. This resulting understanding of HFpEF has enabled me to lead clinical trials in HFpEF, and while we haven't found effective therapy yet, I'm sure we will soon. Throughout my career, I've been lucky to have outstanding mentors, and particularly Dr. John Burnett, and wonderful collaborators, including Drs. Veronique Roget, Dick Rodeheffer, and Barry Borlaug. I'm fortunate to practice at Mayo Clinic, which is home to the Rochester Epidemiology Project and the Mayo Tissue Registry. These incredible resources have enabled many of my studies. I'm forever indebted to the amazing young investigators I've been able to mentor and learn from over the years. Lastly, I'm honored and very grateful to be awarded the 2019 American Heart Association Population Science Award.
Please join me in congratulating Dr. Redfield. Congratulations, Maggie. Congratulations, well done. The Eugene Brunwald Academic Mentorship Award recognizes individuals with exceptional passion and commitment to mentoring promising young academicians. This year, we are honoring Dr. Lewis R. Kaplan for his decades-long commitment to training and mentoring new leaders in the field of stroke neurology. Dr. Kaplan is a professor of neurology at Harvard Medical School and a neurologist at Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts, where he is a member of the cerebral vascular section. Over the span of his career, he has mentored 78 cerebral vascular fellows in the United States and around the world. Dr. Kaplan is highly regarded by both his colleagues and former students for his personal and professional ethics and for his passion for the personalized care of stroke patients. His students, many of whom have gone on to major leadership roles in clinical trials, academic institutions, and national organizations, including the American Heart Association, describe him as a classical mentor who combines clinical skills with a sensitivity for patient interactions. He has held leadership roles in the American Heart Association Stroke Council, the American Academy of Neurology, the American Neurologic Association, the Association of University Professors of Neurology, the Boston and Chicago Neurologic Societies, and numerous other organizations and institutions. It is my great privilege to award the 2019 Eugene Brunwald Academic Mentorship Award to Dr. Lewis R. Kaplan.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harrington. I and many others who choose a career in academic medicine, and I began in 1970, we first strive to make important scientific and other clinical advances in our chosen field. But with time, whether or not we've made some lasting contributions to knowledge in the care of patients, we really discover that what our most significant and durable accomplishments are those we give to those who follow us, our students, our fellows, our younger colleagues. We bequeath to our mentees our modus operandi, our approach to issues, situations, patients, people, and the public. We teach them how to learn and how to act. We provide role models for interpersonal relationships, ethics, and behavior. I'm very proud to accept the Eugene Brunwald Academic Mentorship Award. Gene is an esteemed colleague, friend, and mentor. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Dr. Kaplan. The Research Achievement Award recognizes a lifetime of extraordinary achievement in cardiovascular science investigation. This year's award goes to Dr. Peter Libby, Mallinckrodt Professor of Medicine at Harvard Medical School and a cardiovascular specialist at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts. He is also a consulting physician at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. Dr. Libby's pioneering work unraveling the role of inflammation in cardiovascular disease has been nothing short of paradigm-changing. His career-long quest to understand how inflammation contributes to atherogenesis substantially deepened our understanding of heart disease, and his ability to translate his findings into the clinic has led to the development of novel new treatment strategies. Even when his work met with skepticism, Dr. Libby was undaunted. He forged ahead with an independent research career that included numerous first discoveries in the pathogenesis of atherosclerosis, including some of the mechanisms that lead to heart attack and stroke. Dr. Libby instigated and helped to lead the first large-scale randomized clinical trial establishing inflammation as a therapeutic target in cardiovascular disease, and his work investigating the risk factors for atherosclerotic events and heart failure continues. Dr. Libby's research has been funded by the American Heart Association and the National Institutes of Health. He is a former recipient of the American Heart Association's Basic Research Prize. His work has also earned him the gold medal of the European Society of Cardiology, the Anna Chow Award from the European Atherosclerosis Society, the Ernst Young Gold Medal for Medicine, and the Earl Bendit Award for Vascular Biology, among many other accolades. Dr. Libby is a longtime volunteer for the American Heart Association, and he has trained generations of fellows and residents, many of whom now occupy leadership positions around the world. It is my great honor to introduce the 2019 recipient of the American Heart Association's Research Achievement Award to Dr. Peter Libby.
Well, I'm humbled and deeply honored by this recognition. Any success that I have enjoyed in medical research derives from attacking in the laboratory problems inspired by clinical questions, always with a view of moving the basic discoveries to the clinic. I've been fortunate to help take the insights gained from our fundamental research into informative clinical trials, and I continue that quest to this day. The translational journey requires a number of essential ingredients, among them guidance and support from mentors. And I was incredibly fortunate to meet mine, Dr. Eugene Braunwald, on the first day of medical school. I still seek his advice regularly, and I try to emulate his devotion with my own trainees. Effective translation also requires partnerships. I view two dimensions of partnership as essential to the mission of translational investigators: horizontal and vertical. Horizontal partnerships between academic colleagues with interlocking skill sets speed the clinical application of basic discoveries. Enduring working relationships and friendships often arise from these horizontal partnerships. Vertical partnerships with industry likewise help harvest the fruits of academic research for the benefit of our patients. Academic investigators excel in target discovery, while few academic centers possess the resources in medicinal chemistry, high-throughput screening, or manufacture required to develop a practical therapeutic. Academic physicians ably design and lead trials, but few have the resources and infrastructure to conduct the scale of clinical investigation necessary to bring a novel cardiovascular therapeutic to patients. Obviously, such vertical partnerships require safeguards: avoidance of financial conflicts of interest, transparency, independent data analyses, and the like. But when properly managed, such partnerships contribute to improving public health. Despite its inevitable challenges, the career path of the physician investigator can provide unmatched satisfaction and the opportunity to advance knowledge and promote health. Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Yes, congratulations. And now, I'd like to turn our attention to artificial intelligence, developing technology, genetics, the inflammation exposure, and other fascinating aspects of what is known as the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Everything about the Fourth Industrial Revolution, of course, greatly impacts the future of medicine, science, and research around the world. Here to present a detailed look at the rapidly changing landscape is Murat Sönmez. He is the head of the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution Network and a member of the managing board of the World Economic Forum. Please join me in welcoming Murat Sönmez.
Good afternoon. I'd like to take us back, let's see if this slide works, 4,000 years, or 3,000 years actually, to a game called Go. It's an ancient Chinese game. It's a board game, as you see on the stage. It's 19 by 19. What's unique about this game is the number of games you can play on it. This is the number, and we'll have a quiz later on for you to see who memorized the whole thing. It is a big number. It's 2.08 times 10 to the power 172. How big is that number? It's a lot bigger than the atoms in the known universe, which is 10 to the power 70 or 72. So for a long time, this was the ultimate goal of artificial intelligence researchers, to learn how to play, to beat the grandmasters of this game. Chess was mastered in 1998 by IBM. They played against Kasparov. He won the first game. IBM won the second game. He wanted to play again. IBM was happy with the tie, and they unplugged the machines. But it had a lot fewer games to play. In March 2016, a machine learning engine called AlphaGo, developed by three guys in the UK, Demis, Mustafa, and Shane, beat the 18-time world champion Lee Sedol 4-1. This was a pivotal moment because, number one, it happened 10 to 20 years before experts thought it would happen. In fact, I asked one of our members of our Artificial Intelligence Council, he's a top AI researcher at UC Berkeley. I asked him, I said, how far did you think we were away from mastering Go before this happened? He said 10 to 20 years. So it happened ahead of schedule. Number two, it was the first time the machine insight surpassed human insight. Because Go is a game of insight, not intelligence. It's impossible for anyone, given the number of games you saw on the screen, for them to go through all of these permutations and come back and say this is the best move. So it's a game of insight. And number three, it had societal implications because this young man, Lee Sedol, who had been playing Go since age 3, was a role model for every Korean parent who had a young daughter or son, who told them, look, if you work hard, if you study hard, you have a shot at being Lee Sedol. Suddenly he was beaten by a machine. What do you do as a parent? What do you do as a teacher? What do you do as a society? What do you do if you're a university president? And as these technologies are evolving rapidly, it is really changing everything, as Bob mentioned. The way they mastered this game is very, very interesting. They looked at data from 100,000 games played online. So from a total population of 10 to the power of 172, they looked at 10 to the power of 5. And the machine itself developed its own algorithm, its method to play Go. To this date, we don't know why it made the moves it made. We know what it made, and we don't know why. In fact, in one of the games, I think it was game 3, it made a move that everybody said, oh, okay, it's going to lose the game. But that was a pivotal decision for the machine to win the game. When you play it backward, you know it, but when it's made, we didn't know. And that's called the black box problem in AI. It's called the transparency or lack of transparency of algorithms. So the algorithm is not written by a human being. It is derived from the data, from limited data, by the machine itself, and there's no way for us to know what it is. And there's a lot of research going into it called the black box AI problem or transparency of algorithms. In fact, Elon Musk started an initiative called OpenAI, which is now led by a young man. He went to Stanford, but I shouldn't tell this to Bob, but he dropped out and started one of the most successful incubators, Y Combinator. And Sam Altman is running OpenAI, and Microsoft just invested $1 billion into it to accelerate the solution to the transparency of algorithms. This raises a number of questions about ethics. How do we know that the algorithm is ethical? Whose ethics? Who are we to tell each other? Who owns the intellectual capital to the algorithm? We are now seeing the shift from physical capital to intellectual capital to algorithmic capital. The algorithm gets better and better over time. Who owns the intellectual property to it? What happens if something goes wrong? Who's liable? These are unforeseen to date governance questions. And that's what we're doing at the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution Network, is as these technologies are evolving rapidly at unprecedented speed and scale, the governance mechanisms, the rules and regulations and norms and ethics and legal system are falling way behind. And by the time we react to a single development, a new one has happened, and we always operate in this gray area called the too late zone. And there is also a danger that these developments will be taken advantage of by privileged few in the society. I'm not talking about mega millionaires. If you're wearing a wearable device, you're one of the privileged few. And the gap, as you know, has been widening in the last 40 years. And there's a real danger that these technologies will further exacerbate the division between the privileged few and the rest of the society. And as we know, and we have seen politically around the world, when people feel left behind, it's not morally right, it's not socially right, and it's not economically right. So our mission is to ensure that the fourth industrial revolution benefits everyone, not just a few. There's also another danger, which is a bit more systemic. Artificial intelligence needs data. It needs data from people, data from things, and in fact, by 2020, which is a few months out, there will be 20 billion things providing data. Embedded hearts and embedded devices, wearables, sensors, transformers, cars, drones, satellites. And we talk about the privacy of data, of individual data, but there's also a lot more data coming from things. And as we know in your field, if you can combine lifestyle data, environment data, and personal data, we may be able to accelerate the formulation of the solutions, some of the biggest challenges we have in medicine. The AlphaGo guys didn't stop there. That was 3 years ago. A year later, they introduced an engine called AlphaGo Zero. They just fed the rules of the game to it, and the engine played against itself, and in 3 days, generated enough data to make it to reach a level that beat the original engine 100 to 0 with self-generated data. In 40 days, it generated data that would have taken humanity hundreds of years and achieved what they call superhuman intelligence level. And in the words of one of the founders, Demis Hassabis, he says, quote, "We're no longer constrained by the limits of human knowledge," end quote. This is from him, and this represents enormous opportunities as well as challenges. When you think about this and scientific method, does it put scientific method on steroids? Or does it provide an alternative mechanism? And these are questions to be discussed. It's not just in artificial intelligence. You're seeing that in genetic engineering, in synthetic biology, in medicine, as well as in physical technologies like the drones. And this drone that I'm holding in my hand was one of the first 10 drones flown in Rwanda to deliver blood supplies to women dying during childbirth because they couldn't store enough types of blood long enough in the clinics over 1,000 hills. So they said, why don't we use drones? And they created a centralized blood storage facility. And they would get an SMS message, and using one of these drones, which is the version 1 of these drones from Zipline, They would deliver the blood, round-trip time 45 minutes, and in the initial pilot, they saved the lives of 1,000 women. But they couldn't scale because civil aviation rules got in the way. They couldn't fly drones because it interfered with the commercial flights. And also, flying drones had safety issues and data policy issues. The drones could collect data on agriculture and physical infrastructure and survey of the land, but they didn't have the data policy. Their civil aviation authority head told the president that he had to certify each drone one at a time. Well, as they do with airplanes. There's a new airplane model every 10 years, but there's a new drone model every 10 days. So they couldn't keep up with it. So that's why Rwanda partnered with us early on, and in 5 months, our drone team of 2 people working with the fellows on the ground and with us in San Francisco, in 5 months we crafted the first and at the time only performance-based drone regulatory framework, which went into effect. It's now been adopted across 12 African countries. We're taking it to India, and FAA recently published a recommendation based on the work that we did in Rwanda. The results, Rwanda became the first country to achieve 0 loss rate in blood delivery. They have the largest civilian network of, civilian drones. All of the technicians are Rwanda citizens. They don't need to go to college. They can be trained very, very quickly. And it has become the drone capital of the world. Carnegie Mellon is opening a campus in Kigali. And the next frontier for this landlocked, small East African country is artificial intelligence. So it represents huge opportunities for developed and undeveloped nations as well. When we look at artificial intelligence, there are 3 fundamental questions. Number 1, data. People say data is the oil, the new oil. We would like to think it's more mission critical, so we refer to it as the oxygen for the 4th Industrial Revolution. The questions about who owns the data, what can you do with it, and who gets paid are critical questions. Right now, data is in the hands of 5 to 10 platform companies. The term that I had heard being used about them is data oligarchs. We're opening a center in Russia as well, and I used that term, and they smiled. And their valuations are hundreds of billions of dollars and exceeding some of the GDPs of many nations. And we're now seeing a backlash from the government saying that, hang on a second, you can collect the data, but you cannot take it out of our country. Or if you take it out of our country, you have to apply our own rules as the European Union did with General Data Protection Regulation. Well, if you want to solve or accelerate the cure for a rare disease or different types of cancer, we need to collaborate around the world and put our different data sets together. And if we do that and put it under a machine learning engine, we may be able to accelerate the cure for some of these rare diseases. But that requires a forward-looking data policy, which is one of the areas we're working on. So our approach is, and this was actually inspired by one of our advisory board members, will.i.am, the musician. Nancy Brown, the CEO of American Heart Association, is also a member of our advisory board. So we have a very fun and intellectually stimulating board discussion when they're together. will.i.am said, anytime somebody uses my music, I get residual value out of it. I get paid. Why can't we do the same for data? So what we said was, what if we keep the data where it's collected, at the edge, let the owners decide what it can be used for. So if somebody wants to use my genetic data, I can say, anyone who wants to use it for cancer research, you can use it free of charge. I don't want to get paid. But if it's for commercial purposes, ask for my consent. Actually, we can program this on the data set itself using blockchain smart contracts. So we can enforce actually what's permitted when the data travels. When somebody launches a cancer research application, it has to be certified by a body. It could be a Cancer Research Association, or it could be the government. It says, I'm looking for this type of data. Data gets notified. It's already provisioned. It makes itself available with the smart contract so we can enforce the limitation. But if it's for commercial purposes, the data will notify the owner. It says, somebody's wanting to use your data for this purpose. Are you willing to provide it? And I can say yes for 6 months, and I want to get paid. The question is, how do we value data, which itself does not have inherent value? How many of you had a cup of coffee this morning? Okay, I can't see it, but I assume it's a lot. Now I can see some of that. So we pay $1, $5, $3 for a cup of coffee. But when you look at coffee beans, they don't have dollar signs associated with them. Somehow the price gets set. And that mechanism is called a commodity exchange. And we said, can we create a marketplace for data and treat it like a commodity? Technically, that means that the governments decide data is a commodity, much like coffee beans or soybeans or tea. And it does not have to be, a commodity does not have to be a physical asset. It could be carbon emissions. So the legal structure is in place. But we cannot put data into a marketplace because of volume and privacy. You heard previously that there is a lot of data being generated, and we don't want to put everybody's data. And we said, can we put a reference to the data, a proxy? And this is where tokens came in from blockchain platforms. So the idea is for a government to create a token system, and we create a token exchange as a proxy for the value of the data. So anytime somebody wants to use my data with my consent, I get notified, I get paid, and the finance ministry or the treasury can tax it at the moment of transaction. As you can imagine, the finance people are really, really loving this idea, but it also allows us to get the residual value out of our data. This handles privacy, it handles equity, and it also handles security and allows cross-border data flow collaborations. This is already in the works with Japan, which is, as you know, the pioneering aging society. And my colleague Chizuru Sugo will be talking about this at 4 p.m. today at the Health Innovation area near Hartap. So you can really get into the details of what we're doing in Japan. And we'll be publishing our initial findings in January. And Japan, I think, is setting the tone for the rest of the world, not only in using this mechanism domestically to address late-stage brain diseases and lifestyle issues associated with dementia, but also cross-border collaboration when they called for flexible flow of data. The second question that's in the middle is ethics. How do we ensure that these algorithms are ethical, and whose ethics are we going to follow? Is it American ethics? Is it Saudi ethics? Is it Chinese ethics? Is it Russia? Is it Brazil? Is it Mexico? We can agree on the principle, but how do we activate that? Much like the music industry we were inspired with on the exchange idea, we said, are there technologies that are inherently dangerous but are being used safely? And that's electricity. If you look at the evolution of electricity in late 19th, early 20th century, it was adopted by the American factories to replace steam engines, and it caused all kinds of fires. The insurance companies got fed up, and they said, how can we prevent the fires caused by electricity? I'm sure they thought about banning electricity, but it didn't work out, as we see. Then they said, how do we make it safer? They discovered an already existing technology called circuit breaker, invented by Thomas Edison, and they created a captive institution called Underwriter Laboratories, and they told the factory owners that if you do not use UL-certified circuit breakers, we're not going to insure you. So one of our initiatives is to create Internet of Ethical Devices by embedding ethics rules as defined by each country. So when an internal or external instruction gets to this thing, whether it's a big thing like a car or a drone or a small one like an embedded device, it says, no, it's against the rules or ethics rules of my jurisdiction, and I'm not going to do it. Technically, it's possible. It's downloadable instruction sets, as we do with our smartphones every day. And we can use smart contracts under blockchain to define these rules. Governments are happy because they can ensure that they minimize harmful behavior by these things. Manufacturers love it because they don't have to deal with 134 different regulatory frameworks and be penalized. And insurance companies love it because they can minimize harm and reduce rate risk. So this is in the interest of everyone. And if we can do that, then we can ensure that the fourth industrial revolution benefits everyone, not just a few. And finally, the third question is access. Who gets access to all of this? As I mentioned earlier, is it just a few? And how do we ensure that the rest of the society benefits from that? And that's why it is very, very important to have civil society organizations like the American Heart Association like International Trade Union Confederation that has 250 million unionized workers, to be working with us on a global level, on a multi-stakeholder basis, on an accelerated basis to address these opportunities and the challenges that we have. If we can do that, we can reduce energy consumption. If we can do that, we can reduce congestion. If we can do that, we can improve agriculture yields. And if we can do that, one day we may be able to accelerate the cure for some of the most intractable diseases we have. So the idea is to make sure that the fourth industrial revolution technologies are ethical, equitable, and just. I would like to briefly talk about the technologies we're working on. Blockchain, it embeds trust and transparency into the system. We're working with the Colombian government in Medellin in government procurement of school meals to ensure that it's built in. Internet of Things and smart cities allow us to collect the data that I talked about. Data policy is the core operating system for all of that. It's the binding tissue, and we need to create global interoperable data protocols. We're working with 27 countries in this endeavor, and they're all very willing to implement this. AI and machine learning, I talked about there's ethical issues, but also use of AI in private sector companies in terms of who owns the intellectual property and the risk mitigation. And at the top, you see the implementations in drones, autonomous vehicles, environment, precision medicine, and digital trade. With that, I'd like to conclude my remarks and invite all of you to join us in our quest for ensuring that the fourth industrial revolution benefits everyone and not just a few. Thank you very much.
Murat, thank you for that incredible and inspiring talk. At the American Heart Association, we are a relentless force for a world of longer, healthier lives, and we educate and empower people to be active stewards of their own health and well-being. Devices that can fit on our wrist or in our pocket are changing how we capture meaningful health information. By engaging consumers in this effort, we are accelerating medical discovery. As part of our strategic relationship with Apple, earlier this week, we launched the Apple Heart and Movement Study in collaboration with Dr. Callum McRae and the Brigham and Women's Hospital. To learn more about this study and to participate yourself, download the Apple Research app from the App Store. Understanding the link between cardiovascular diseases and diabetes is the focus of our new strategically focused research network. Congratulations to these awardees and their institutions for being selected as part of the new network. Hopefully they're coming up. There they are. Thank you. I couldn't see them. They were behind me. The reason we fund strategically focused research networks is to make sure that specific areas of science that are critical to the American Heart Association's mission get the support they need. Sometimes those areas are newly emerging, such as cardio-oncology, which is so new that the term hardly existed when we first established strategically focused research networks earlier this decade. The risk of death from heart disease is 8 times higher in cancer survivors compared with the general population. We plan to change these outcomes with our $15 million commitment to this research. Look for an RFA this spring. Patients affected with structural heart disease need a new standard of care. It gives me great pleasure to announce that Edwards Lifesciences has committed $10 million to the American Heart Association to raise patient awareness and deepen engagement while improving the system of care through quality improvement programming. Together, we will improve the patient experience from symptom onset to just-in-time diagnosis, treatment, and management while delivering guideline-directed care and patient education. Thank you to the leadership of Edwards Lifesciences. As Dr. Harrington mentioned, the American Heart Association's Go Red for Women movement and Verily's Project Baseline have created Research Goes Red to empower more women to participate in scientific research. We're off to a great start as more than 22,000 women have already registered for Research Goes Red. Based upon their feedback, we've commissioned our Go Red for Women strategically focused research network directors to conduct an in-depth study on weight within the registry. I'm also pleased to announce new Research Goes Red grants to increase awareness and inspire action in cardiovascular disease detection and prevention in millennial women within underrepresented racial and ethnic groups. We will begin accepting those applications later today, with awards announced in March. As cigarette use in the United States began spiraling down, eventually reaching an all-time low last year, Big Tobacco knew it needed a way to improve its bottom line. As we all know, they turned their attention to e-cigarettes. Now, vaping is the new smoking, especially among our youth. Let me put this in perspective. At the start of this decade, about 1 in 100 teens used e-cigarettes. These days, the ratio is upwards of 1 in 4. The tobacco industry is rapidly evolving its products and aggressively marketing new products to vulnerable audiences, including youth, communities of color, low income, and LGBTQ communities. Big Tobacco is doing everything in its power to hook the next generation on a lifetime of tobacco and nicotine with seemingly little care for how all of this will impact individuals, families, and communities. Well, we care. We care to the tune of $20 million. That's how much we're putting into researching the depths of this problem through the End the Lies Youth Vaping and Nicotine Research Initiative. There is no evidence to understand the long-term health effects of vaping and nicotine addiction on youth and adolescents. So let's create it. We're going to fund 2 or 3 scientists and their teams to work intensively over the next 2 years to provide the data we need to help stem this tide. This is part of our triple threat strategy against the growing entity of Big Vape. In addition to trusted science and research, we're also coming after them with unrelenting advocacy and community action. By leveraging our nationwide and very significant school footprint and by leading national and local policy, we will activate parents, educators, superintendents, school nurses, youth, and elected officials to put an end to this epidemic. No matter what country you are from, vaping should be a concern to you. Kaiser Permanente shares our grave concern for the toll this growing epidemic is taking on our youth and communities. This weekend, they announced a significant commitment to the American Heart Association to create the Preventing Youth Nicotine Addiction Policy Fund. Powerful collaborations such as this are essential to creating change. We again acknowledge Dr. Regina Benjamin, former U.S. Surgeon General and a board member for Kaiser Permanente and for the AHA, who is here in the audience today. Thank you, Kaiser Permanente, for this significant commitment. As you have likely heard, just this weekend, our important strategic partner, Apple, has pulled all vaping-related apps from the App Store. We applaud them for standing with us and putting a stake in the ground against Big Vape. We have been talking about the impact of vaping on youth. It is time to hear from some teenagers. Representing these voices and millions of their peers is Caitlin Quesada, a high school junior from Los Angeles. Caitlin, come on up. Caitlin was in the 6th grade when friends encouraged her to try flavored e-cigarettes. At first, she didn't understand all of the pushback by grown-ups. Then she learned better. She became a powerful voice in her community, and she is here with us today, and she has something to say. And we're going to let all her friends join her before she gets started. All right, Caitlin, let's hear what you have to say.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Quesada, and I'm a junior at Animo Oscar de Loya Charter High School in Los Angeles, California. My generation was literally supposed to be the first generation not addicted to nicotine. But then vaping came along and everything changed. Well, I stand here today to deliver an open letter to Big Vape with my peers from Philadelphia. Dear Big Vape, not sure if you're aware, but lying is bad. And you've been lying for a long time. You say vaping isn't smoking, but the nicotine in one pod equals an entire pack of cigarettes. You say you're not big tobacco, but the tobacco giant that makes Marlboro cigarettes owns 35% of the largest e-cigarette makers. You say you're not marketing to teens, but your flavors say otherwise. So let us school you on the dangers of lying. Lying leads to nicotine addiction. Lying leads more people to smoking. Lying is producing lung disease, heart disease, and cancer. Lying has landed hundreds of e-cigarette users in hospitals. Those are the facts. And the fact is, lying kills. It's obvious to teachers, school administrators, parents, the American Heart Association, and especially students, that vaping is a life or death health threat. But the bigger epidemic in this country is even more sinister. You're lying. Quit lying. Everyone in this room, take out your phones and post your commitment to the cause by tweeting, "Hey Big Vape," #quit lying. Our movement begins here today in Philadelphia. Will you be the first to join us? Our lives are at stake.
Thank you to Caitlin and to all of these remarkable young people who have had enough of the tobacco industry taking advantage of them and their youth. And yes, they deserve a standing ovation. Also joining us in this movement is our longtime youth health and wellness partner, the National Football League, which will use its voice to help reach millions in this fight to keep kids safe. Visit quitlying.org to sign the open letter, get social media content, and access the wealth of other assets to empower Caitlin, the teens of Philadelphia, and all of America's youth. We urge you to join the conversation at #quitlying. We need to hear from you now. The health of an entire generation may depend on it. And that, my friends, is what it means to be a relentless force. Thank you.
Nancy, Caitlin, what exciting news. Before you leave Philadelphia, please sign our open letter to Big Vape. You will have opportunities right when you leave this room and in the registration area tomorrow. But first, when we conclude the Connor Presidential System, there's going to be one more performance from Hamilton. Thank you all for being here. All right, let's go.